He is one of the up-and-coming names as a national sports broadcaster. Kevin Fitzgerald, he won the 2014 Jim Nantz Award, which goes to the best college broadcaster. And can you guess what college he went to? Let me think. Yeah, Syracuse. So much of his experiences came from being a part of the Orange and is part of an elite fraternity of amazing broadcasters. And he is continuing in that line as he's currently with ESPN basketball, college baseball, softball. You also see him on FS1, a long history in the past of minor league baseball. So we're going to have some fun talking about his career, learn about Kevin on a deep level, and we're going to get some questions out there and some answers. You know, Kevin does a lot of podcasts. He's a face out there, but we're going to learn things about him that perhaps others who've watched his work haven't known about him before. So this will be fun. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is the On to Something podcast. I am a broadcaster for Fox Sports Radio. So Kevin, we've been meaning to do this for a while. It is an honor to have you. I want to make sure I get in your Twitter handle, Kevin T. Fitz. So I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. I don't know how you have time for this, but I'm grateful for it. And I want to start here. Yesterday, I had on Chris Farrow. And I know that Chris Farrow has had an incredible role in the formation of your career. I was listening to a podcast that you were on where you owe so much gratitude to him for giving you that jump start onto the national scene. What do you think he saw in you, Kevin, at a young age that gave you that first shot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do owe Chris quite a bit, but first I want to say thanks for having me. We connected on Twitter not long ago because I reached out. I had listened to one of your podcasts. I think it was Nick Davis.
Oh, of course.
I was about to hop on a call with him. I was like, oh, this is great, something kind of new. And I had reached out to you. I said, like, great stuff. Just love the interviews, love the insightfulness. You were kindly said join the show, so thank you.
Yes.
For that. But I'll tell you, I owe him a lot. I think it's an illustration of this. I think it's an illustration of somebody, believing in you. I think Chris had an interest in me and believed in what I could do, believed in my talents. And I think you always need that. You always hear that throughout the course of a career. Who are your supporters? Who are your sponsors? Chris was one for me, and I'm forever grateful for that. What did he see in me? I think he saw someone probably who was just passionate about this. We connected when I was a student at Syracuse. I had gotten the tip, this is someone noteworthy to reach out to. This is someone who can help you, someone who can provide feedback, tell you how to get better, what to do, so on and so forth. So I reach out with a clip. Hey, do you mind taking a look? He was willing to do that. And I was kind of strategic, and I was like, you know what? I want to stay in touch with him. We met in person. So I think he saw just an interest from me, or a passion about the direction of where I wanted to go. And so, hey, it's almost one of those, you don't want to be afraid of letting it be known where you want to go, or where you see yourself, or what you want to accomplish. So probably that, I think just an enthusiasm. I think at the time, this is now 6 years ago when he initially hired me. And this was to do some games here or there. It was a few games, maybe not even a dozen during one basketball season. It was kind of on a fill-in basis. I think I felt that I could handle it. I could handle the job and jump on the air. And I had only done radio stuff up until that point. But my mentors and friends were folks that were on TV or were working at ESPN. And I think I just had a great resource base and felt very confident that I could do it. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the confidence. Maybe it was just the passion. Because I'm telling you, I really, when I was in school at Syracuse, you referenced it before, the fledgling communication school, it's starting to build up its reputation right now.
Yes.
Syracuse, I think I just developed a passion specifically for play-by-play. It felt like the perfect avenue for me. So he might have recognized that, but he said, I remember he said that to me years ago after I got my start. He's like, I wanted to give you a chance. So I'm grateful for that. I think he was interested in maybe elevating and giving some young folks their chance. And so I'm grateful for that. I owe him a whole bunch of dinners. Don't tell him that, but I do.
So he gave you one of your first chances, and so many people are given their first chances, Kevin, and they don't knock it out of the ballpark, to use a cliche, like you did. What was it internally as you were going into one of those first broadcasts when Chris Farrow brought you on to say, "Hey, my name is Kevin Fitzgerald. I know what kind of a launch pad this is going to be, and I'm not going to mess this up."
And to go back to the first point about not knocking out of the park, that can happen, but that's not, it's not the end. I think that's important to realize, right? Like we're our worst enemies sometimes. We're so overcritical, and sometimes we think that way. And it's almost like there are going to be many opportunities, I think, if you believe in yourself. But I thought I always felt that being kind of behind the mic was okay, so we're doing a show and it's being consumed by people. I don't think that ever bothered me. What you say is kind of, it's being viewed, it's being watched, and maybe that can mess with some people. So I think that is what gave me some confidence. I felt confident in my work, but it was because of the people who helped me get to where I was at that time. I had a great resource base or a connection base. A lot of folks in the industry that I had the ability to reach out to and ask for help or ask for feedback. Heck, I remember after that happened, one of the first calls was probably it wasn't the first, it was one of, it's probably to Jason Benetti. I mean, like this guy was instrumental in helping me not just improve as a broadcaster, but improve my confidence. Like, I think when you improve at what you do, that builds confidence, and it's twofold there. And I probably asked him, like, what the heck do I do? What do I like? What's this TV thing? Well, what do you do? What are the ins and outs? What are the basics? What's the formula like? What's the week leading up to a game? What to expect? I think that's really critical. I think that's really critical to have folks that you can reach out to and ask some of the basic questions, or ask elementary stuff, or questions that might sound stupid, but it helps you get the answer that you need to do the job. So I'm forever grateful, and very much, owe a lot to folks like Jason who helped prepare me for that. So it's not only the prep and being ready for the game, but it's also, being ready for the formula, being ready for the routine. I think that is behind a TV call at the time. That was my first go at that. So that was critical. I thought that was pivotal in preparing me for it.
Kevin Fitzgerald joins us. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is the On to Something podcast. Of course, Kevin is on ESPN, FS1, and beyond. He's done so much work on the minor league baseball level, and he's talking about his story with me today. I am with Fox Sports Radio as a national anchor. So you talked about Jason, Kevin, and when it came to a time when he would look at your work, and I remember some of the podcasts when you talked about how he used to, and you said it in a playful way, he would rip your work to shreds. He did it all out of love, obviously. This was all for your best interest. But specifically in-game broadcasting, what was something that he wanted to key in on you with as far as you need to do this better? Like, what was a focal point on his part that he was looking at when it was in reflection of your work?
It all centered around you be a good person, be a teammate. I think for when it comes to television, and I'll break that down to a couple, but I think the biggest caveat there is it's a team. It very much is. It's you, it's analyst. It could be reporter, producer, director. Like, that is a team. I think you've got to, the best relationships are genuine ones. You can't, you can't really fake sometimes relationships. You can't fake genuine ones. And I think the better teamwork, camaraderie, chemistry you have, that's really important. So I remember the first bits, or the first probably pieces of stuff that he shared with me was just, get to know the people that you're working with, because that's going to be critical behind developing a good chemistry and everything like that. But when you relate that question to specific play-by-play stuff, it was like, listen to your analyst. At the time, you're young, you're just trying to get on the air and make sure you don't mess up a word or a description, or there's so much going on, I think, that you have to juggle when you initially get started. And he would point out times where it's like that your analyst just said something, respond to it. And so that was just a philosophy that he and many others, instilled in me. And that's why I think, look, I think back to this past year, we're all working remotely, but still had a great deal of fun, I think, based on the relationships that I have with some folks that I work with. And it makes for a fun product, even though it was abnormal this past year. So I just think that's something that I've always really taken to heart, is like, let's make this sound conversational. What are the best, you think about a great conversation you had this week, it's with like your best friend or your significant other, like someone that you have a genuine relationship with. So that was always a big one for me, was let's make this thing sound conversational. Let's listen to your analyst, listen to your producer. Do you have something hit? I think generally producers like when there's a little bit of communication. Hey, what are you seeing? What do you guys want? When it comes to the in-game communication with your talk back. So those are, I think, pretty key philosophies of mine. Inform and entertain. Let's keep it light. Let's have some fun. I'm not calling the Super Bowl anytime soon. So, like you can keep it light. You can have some fun. You can get serious when you need it to be serious, when the game the game is paramount. But yeah, let's inform and entertain. I always liked that. I always liked watching broadcasts where where there was a little bit of humor or wit, though that always stood out to me.
So, Kevin, when I listen to you talk right there, and certainly one of the common denominators for you is the teamwork and how that plays out on screen. It's very evident when watching your broadcast, because, like you said, I think one of the byproducts of that is being conversational, having some levity, having some fun, throwing in some humor, all of these things that you accomplish. And just watching your work and watching your presence, you're confident, but in no way do I see any ego from you. And in a business that we're in, where ego seems to be one of the prevailing factors in the industry, I just don't see it from you. So how have you been wired to be the way you are, and to be such a selfless human being, and to do it in an industry where it's kind of like me all over the place?
Well, I mean, that's nice for you to say. I think there are a lot of people though who I think are similar, the no ego, right? There's a lot. So, but I do try to operate that way. I mean, I don't know. The game has always been priority number one. So I don't think I don't think it's in me. Like I don't think it's in the DNA to try to hijack anything or try to overtake a spotlight or something like that. I'm telling you, I viewed the life play-by-play, that job, that role is like perfect for me. I always thought, yes, we're there to share the story, because the best part is you do the homework. It is fun. It is fun to share the story in your way, no question, or doing it in the manner that you think is best with your analyst. So that part is fun. But I always thought the game call, we were kind of like a rumor, you know what I mean? And sometimes you don't really, you got that on camera at the beginning and maybe at halftime, but we were always, we were there to caption the action. We weren't really the story. I think that was just something I connected with, or that was like perfect for me. I think I'd rather be the narrator, the person kind of captioning the action, compared to other maybe roles in our broadcasting media profession. Because it allowed you to still strike that kind of journalistic chord of sharing the story, providing the context, but to be able to do it in, again, I think in a manner where you can have some fun, you can entertain as well, relatively speaking. So I don't know. It's just, Ian Eagle said this. I remember he said this at a symposium I was at a couple of years ago, forgetting, might've been 2 or 3 years ago. it was the simplest thing that anybody could come up with. But he goes, just put good out into the world, and you'll probably get good back. You're not trying to do it to get the good back, but just put the good out. So I don't know. I think that to me means, yeah, it's not about you, let's make this a team. Let's focus on the game. Let's focus on the story. So yeah, I think I've always operated that way. I think you're right on by picking up on it a little bit, but that's just always been, I don't know, pretty fundamental to who I am, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the things about you that I admire so much. Kevin Fitzgerald is with us. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin T. Fitz. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So you are so hawkish when it comes to finding stories. And obviously you really can separate yourself as a broadcaster, better than anyone, when you're able to find those little nuggets. And sometimes you got to dig, you got to really do your research and be up all night finding these little pieces of information on these players that are not readily available, that they're not in the big packets that you would get from, say, a school's PR rep or their communications department. But when we canvass your storytelling of your life, where do you find a time that was most trying for you?
I think it might be in recent years. I mean, I think we all probably, I think we're all guilty of, we were just talking about this before we go on, sometimes you become overcritical of yourself. That's happened to me. Sometimes you're sitting there and you're wondering, am I kind of performing up to snuff? Am I good enough? Are you good enough? Are you improving? That's probably qualifies, as an answer to what you're saying. I mean, there are times where you start work. Certainly myself, you start to worry, like, am I doing enough? Is the product that I'm putting out quality? How can I get better? Sometimes that doubt creeps in. I'll be the first. I'll admit sometimes you spend too much time on that, and that's never good. It's never it's never wise to do that. I think as you grow older, as I grow older here, I think I've learned just to stay away from that stuff. Like focus on your games, or focus on the next year. It's like just the more you can focus on your routine or the process or your process or what you do to prepare and do your job to the best of your ability, the better. So I've been there. I've had those trying times where you just overthink and you do the compare game.
Yes.
One thing that I try to do that I feel good about, that I do less of it, is that it's like, this is a long marathon. The career is a marathon. That's it. It's like, would a marathon runner freak out and panic because their mile 16 time the pace was 2 seconds off? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't happen. So I think looking at it from that perspective has helped during the trying times. Cause that's probably the biggest hurdle for me. It's myself sometimes. So that I think that, that probably is it, where you're kind of wondering, is this enough? But it's just like, focus on what you think is your best work. Now, I think awareness is important. You got to have awareness. Am I, do I need to improve this aspect of what I do? Can I improve that? So on and so forth. So that part, I think you always need to fine tune. But yeah, it's that you do that comparison game. I hate to admit it, but yeah, as I think when you're young in your career, you do that. Sometimes you're guilty of doing that. And that's one thing that if there's any piece of advice I can give, it's do less of that. And again, I think it's just focusing. Well, how do you focus on what you do well, focus on what you can do to get better. That's it. Forget about comparing to others. Maybe just look at your work, look at what you do, look at your systems and everything like that, and just fine tune it.
Oh, it's so well said, Kevin, because there's no benefits to comparing. What do you get out of that other than having a toxic feeling overtake your body? And like you said, some people ripen faster than others. Some people get to places faster than others. And just because you're not there at that time doesn't mean you're not going to get there. Everybody has a different road. Everybody has a different set of challenges, and everybody has a different way of going about things. where ultimately they can get to the big time, but social media does not help. You know, when you see different things going on, and especially, let me take it this direction as far as the conversation. When you are at Syracuse and you have so many great friends in the industry, so many mentors that went there, and a lot of the symposiums and a lot of the different people who have played such a fundamental part into your growth. How do you separate the fact that, look, I am growing myself, but at the same time, and I'm friends with them, but you're also not comparing yourself to them and getting caught up in that competition game that can happen because of Syracuse and even the pressure, Kevin, that comes going there and feeling like I have to live up to this because that person did. I have to reach that standard, and what that's like internally.
Yeah, totally. I always thought when I was there, I could speak to, the school that I went to, and that is Syracuse. And you're right. I mean, there have been many talented, skilled, insightful, impactful broadcasters, journalists, people all over the world, working for all sorts of publications or networks, so on and so forth. That yes, they went there. They worked at the student radio stations, which I'm telling you, they are beneficial. They are beneficial to anybody's growth. If you're serious about it, if you want to get better, if you want to use that competition, competition isn't the right word. If you want to, I think it's motivation. I think it's more motivation because there's a system in place. You're calling all the games. There's a broadcast and a pregame show, and there's a TV station as well. There's a second radio station. So I think if you use it as motivation, it can be extremely beneficial. Like we always thought, I mean, it was a quote unquote a student radio station. We were running it like we thought we were professionals. It felt professionally run, I think, because we all cared about the product. But sure, yeah, I think what it is. It's almost like an illustration that feelings of pressure. And I think this permeates into every industry, not even just ours, but that like pressure, competitiveness. You know what it illustrates? It's like, it doesn't just exist in one area of a life. It's like, oh, when I get past that, or when I reach this age, it's like, no, that stuff can, if you let it, I think can stay with you forever. I mean, you don't reach a certain age or an accomplishment and say, oh, finally the pressure is gone, or it's not competitive anymore. I think it's like, look, what did Tom Brady say? It's the older you get and the harder it actually gets. So yes, I think that is part of it. So you almost have to make friends with it, I guess, or just you put too much pressure on yourself, you could be toast, no question. So it's just finding the ways to, what brings you comfort, what brings you joy. I mean, what we do brings us joy. And so when you're not caught up in that, the better off you are. But maybe it's just knowing that, I think it's not like when you reach a certain barrier or a certain step or bar, all that goes away. Like, oh, I don't have to be competitive, or there won't be any pressure anymore. It's almost like, I love this one. And this is timely and apropos because I've got a Kentucky event. I'm doing one of their preseason events in a few weeks, but one of my favorite Cal-isms, I don't know. And by the way, I don't know if he is the originator or the initial scribe of this quote. I know he uses it, but it's like to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
That's what life is. So I love that one. And hey, it's some days it's easier than others, right? But that's any person in any industry, in any job. But yeah, it's almost that, just get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think the ride and the journey is that much more enjoyable.
Speaking of being uncomfortable, things happen in a broadcast where maybe something happens on the court that isn't as planned, or there's a technical difficulty. When is a moment where you felt most comfortable when things around you that were outside of your control were not going to plan and could cause that feeling of being uncomfortable?
Not trying to fool the audience. I think, I'm thinking back to a recent one. it's not, you know, the lights going out at Mercedes-Benz Stadium level like a Super Bowl, but you know, there was like a clock malfunction in a game, and you know, you're coming back from, I think we were coming back from half, and yeah, we're just like stalling for a few minutes. So I think it's just not trying to fool the audience. Like, all right, we're trying to figure out what's going on as well. All right, looks like the clocks are, looks like the clocks went out. All right, they're wheeling in the new shot clock. It's going to be on the floor. How weird is this going to be? Maybe you say that to your analyst. Or I was doing this with Raps, so Raps making jokes. So I don't know. It's probably just not fooling the audience, or just being upfront. You know, in this case, we weren't even on site. So, I mean, most of the time, we've got a larger scope to look through where we're on site, and you can use some context clues. Yeah, I always thought, you know, like I remember Nance said this somewhere, and Jim's incredibly talented. It's like, I think you reach a point where you don't worry about a subtle slip up, or you might not know what's going on, because it's almost more relatable to the viewer. The viewer may not. Now, I'm not like, I'm not saying I don't know this rule because it was too deep in the rule. Like, you got to know that. You got to know stuff. But when there is some chaos or uncertainty, yeah, I think just it's almost more relatable to the viewer when you go with the flow as well. I think that's the nature of live sports. Yeah, there could be malfunctions. So we're just go with the flow, just like you would when a 4th down and 25 is playing out and you're going with the flow of a play. So I think that's always something I've just maybe grasped or understood in the moment, or when you're there, that, yeah, it could, things can just go sideways, but yeah, just go with it. Have, you know, if it's lighthearted, have some fun with it as well. And yeah, just don't, I think it's like not fooling the viewer, because we're always going to be caught in scenarios where you may not get the explanation. And especially going into this past year, it was like, what do we do? We're all remote. It's almost like less is more in those situations.
Yeah. You brought up Tom Brady. You talked about the lightheartedness. I feel like, and this is an interesting segue into my final question. Kevin Fitzgerald is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. Is the fact that, you know, Tom Brady. What's that?
We rolled out the Adele song on Sunday. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So he's obviously taken on a more lighthearted persona now that he is a Tampa Bay Buck. And now that we see the career that he continues to manifest, it's unbelievable. But any big time athlete like Tom Brady, any major star in the industry like yourself, and as you continue to grow, does so much work when the audience is not watching. You know, athletes talk about working in a dark gym and getting shots up, or working in silence, or doing things when nobody else is. For you, Kevin, what is your version of working in silence to better yourself as a broadcaster when nobody else knows what you're doing and you're just focusing on you in the moment?
Man, where is this? This is probably a good example. I mean, I got a stack of books over here. I mean, like during the summers. Now, I don't work in minor league baseball anymore, but I actually, you know, when the basketball, college basketball, and that's been my primary, you know, beat assignment, if you will, at ESPN, and I love it, for the last few years. And recently some baseball and softball, so it's been extended. But like, you know, there were many years where I was doing minor league baseball, was kind of the basketball off season. So I'll start there. Number one, like reps. I still believe that, like, reps are important regardless if it was a different sport. So to me, the off season was like, you know, minor league ball, and you get to kind of try some, look, the long seasons. They're very long, but it's an avenue to, yeah, you know, try some new stuff. You want to work in phrases. I've got this thing, you know, and this is starting to get filled up, but yeah, it's like a book of descriptions or vocab or whatever. Like, I leave this thing, I think a lot of people do this. I'll leave this thing like by my TV, and I'll jot down phrases. I think it's more so phrases now that I like, than as opposed to maybe the verbs. We've got so many years of practice of that, but like ways to describe things. I'm telling you, like everybody, get the Thesaurus app on your phone. That's one I'll hit, often. I think it's kind of going to school at nights, watching some games. Can't do it every night. I mean, or when you can't watch every game and try to consume it from a broadcasting standpoint. Like enjoy a game from time to time. But that's a big one. I like to write a lot of this stuff down. I think just writing it, things that I like or would like to maybe work in to a show, or how broadcasters, like what vantage point they looked at some things through. Oh, that's a good idea, so on and so forth. I don't know. I think over the last few years, or as you grow older, I'll try to look at things or consume things and go, hey, is that something, or this could be an idea we do on the air.
Yeah.
Or, can we work in this reference, or, can I ask this question? So I think it's like throughout the year, maybe look at it that way. Not you don't have to do it 24/7, 365, but that's and again, it's still fresh for me because like the last couple summers have been my first summers where I've had some downtime, where there's no baseball season. So heck, I'm even still refining a little bit, but reading some books, like do new things. It doesn't even have to be broadcasting related. Like read a fiction book that you never thought you'd pick up, or go rock climb or swim. And that may sound like weird, but I don't know. I think the more, like, if you can just do different things, I've always thought that's instrumental. It's almost like the more ways you can broaden your horizon or mindset, or what you consume, I think is going to aid you on the air. It's like you just want a more holistic viewpoint. Maybe you make you can make some good references. Like Benetti's incredible at that. I think Cowherd's great because his analogies are awesome. It's like this. That's why you're drawn in by like a good analogy. So that stuff can be helpful. I think if anything, what the off season is, it's more like how can you dedicate less time to like sports or like play by play. And yes, I do this, but, and then, what are the ways can you, I think that's pretty critical. And I didn't come up with that. There's a lot of people that I trust that have advised me of that. It's like, listen to what smart people say. So that I think that's a way to really refine how you view things, how you speak. Can you work in vocabulary, like different ways you can describe things? I think all of that will help then when you get back on the air.
How many words are in that notebook you just flashed?
Oh man, how many pages is it? It's actually getting close to it's getting close. I don't know. Maybe that's a good one. A few thousand, probably. Wow. That's the one thing, you do a journalism degree that you never have to write any essay. You never write any essays. Everything's just, in front of the camera. So I don't have a great perspective on how many words, maybe a few thousands. It's like a, pretty, not too thin, but not too thick. That would be my estimation.
Yeah, but all those phrases, they're all embedded in your brain now. So that is clear by.
Why? I try. You try to. That's so. There's a lot. You can't get them all. You're not going to win them all, but it's a good way to at least just it's a good exercise, right? It's why we exercise. And that's just a way to keep your body fresh. This is like keep your mind fresh.
Kevin Fitzgerald, the exercise on what it takes to have a burgeoning career in sportscasting. Kevin, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks for doing this, man. This was so much fun.
It was, and appreciate the invite.